So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you are listening to the latest episode of Secret Sorceress Society for the Barrow Hormone Group. So, I am absolutely delighted that this morning we have a very, very special guest, Adele Wimsett, who I have probably known, well, I have danced with. Oh gosh, must be going on now for about 7 or 8 years. We first met through a love of essential oils. I have sat in some of Adele's gorgeous women's circles. In fact, I think you're probably one of the first people when we were on that retreat in January. We did some sister circle work together. We've got a shared love of cacao. We both use Healy to support us vibrationally, and we have both found ourselves in this world of women's health. And in particular, absolutely, I'm really excited to be able to talk to Adele from the perspective of ADHD, which I know for many women, particularly as we go through perimenopause and beyond, is something that can bubble up. But before we get into that, we're going to have a little cycle check-in, because those of you that know me, I really want this to become a normalized way of when we come together, we actually do this first and foremost, so we know straight away where the other woman, other person is in their cycle. So Adele, I keep wanting to call Adele. We've just had this conversation. That's my love name for Adele. I just add a little
I love it.
on the end, but
I
Adele,
love it.
cycle check-in for you, my darling.
Okay, I feel like I'm on day 3,462 because we know the joys of pen and perimeno. We start to see this little shift. So I am actually on day 31. And I think I'm like feeling an amplification of all of the correspondence of that. So we just stepped into autumn, right? Which correlates with this phase. We're in the waning moon phase. So just having come out of this fiery full moon. So I feel like everything's kind of aligning to really amplify both the strengths and the shadows of this phase. So I'm feeling really calm. I've been really tender with myself over the last couple of days. I've got a really busy schedule, so I'm really balancing that with lots of nourishment either side. So I'm sat here in comfy clothes, wrapped in a blanket, having had a big cup of cacao and done a little breath work with a candle, and I'm like just easing in and flowing here. So I'm here. Let's see if I remember my words. Let's see where this goes. There might be a lot of umming. We're just gonna flow with it.
Oh, and I'm just loving that. And again, for those listening who are, just at the end of, that, well, I'm premenstrual, and they're just waiting for that period to arrive. Please listen to the deliciousness of what Adele has just been sharing. And I was doing a talk last night, and just this, if we can just find a way to nurture ourselves through this space, because obviously we are both very realistic. We fully appreciate not every woman can then slow down, but where can you nourish yourself? So for me, as a postmenopausal woman, I am really feeling the draw of this final quarter moon that's coming at the end of the week, which is inviting me to come into my inner autumn before we move towards that next new moon. So definitely there's an element of slowing down, there's an element of pacing. I'm nurturing. I have bought so many plants. I mean, tell me you're in mother energy without telling me you're in mother energy. I've literally walked into garden centers and gone, oh, give me all the plants, because I've done my front door. I'm putting about another 1,000 plants in my bathroom because I want to create this like luscious Amazonian environment for my baths. And and it's very interesting for me because I felt I was cycling with the new moon, but I actually think I'm cycling with this final quarter moon. So I'm just in this phase of tracking my energy and noticing that in that final quarter, I really come within. I really slow down. That's when I'm wanting the duvets and the nourishment. And then when that new moon comes, I'm kind of like, and now we're back in the game, which interestingly is how I used to be in my menstrual cycle as well. So the thing is, as always, even postmenopause, perimenopause, your cycle is your cycle. As we say at Red School, it's the big red rule. So let me just share Adele's little bio, and there's so much more. Like everybody, our bios just keep growing and growing and growing. So Adele is a women's health practitioner whose passion is to empower women and people who menstruate to harmonize their hormones in order to live an optimized life. And you can find her on Harmonise YOU. From menarche to menopause, she bridges the science and the woo. And again, that's, I think, where we both sit. It's that, yes, let's talk about cacao and crystals and snuggles and lighting candles, but there's an awful lot of science. And I love blending the physiology and the sort of spirituality as well.
That's who we are. That's who we are. There can't be one without the other.
Absolutely. And again, that understanding, isn't there, that our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, things that have happened to us, they then vibrate into our bodies. And I loved it yesterday because I was talking to a new client, and I was talking to her about the book, The Body Keeps Score. You know, because as I'm sure the same as you, when I'm with a client, we do a history and we go all the way through. And I just said to her, I think you might find this book very, very interesting. And then later on, she tagged me on a post because someone else that she knows had recommended The Body Keeps Score. And I love those little universal drop-ins and little like
synchronicities. There we go. Follow the crumbs.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as a woman diagnosed at 41 with ADHD, Adele also has a specialist interest in supporting girls and women with how their hormones affect their undiagnosed or diagnosed ADHD traits. And that was, you know, one of my key reasons for wanting to invite you into our circle, because I think you've got this wealth of knowledge and insights to share. Because, you know, again, as we were saying off air, as I know from talking to many of my clients, quite a lot of them, their daughters are being diagnosed or they're being diagnosed at this perimenopausal phase of life. And I just like to shine, you know, quite rightly, a light into this space. She uses a range of lifestyle protocols, tools and techniques to awaken women to their cyclical superpowers, empowering them to harmonize their hormones to live a happier and healthier life. What more could we want? And I also have to say, huge congratulations, a little bit of fangirling going on here, for becoming the community manager for Nicole Jardin, who is somebody I hold in such high regard. I remember hearing you on her podcast and going, oh my God. And now here you are. And now here you are.
It's just like, it's unbelievable. She's so incredible. She's such a wonderful teacher, and she completely changed my life with the work that I do. So I cannot advocate for her teachings enough.
Absolutely. And well, and your light attracted her, you know, because she must have hundreds of students as well. So, you know, huge congratulations. And I know that between you, you'll just make such a difference to so many other people's lives through the work and support that you give. So, ADHD and hormones. Over to you with your little day 31 insight.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose it's probably quite helpful to define what we're talking about when we're talking about ADHD, because we have to, and we are doing this slowly, but moving away from this stereotypical perception of it being a naughty little white boy bouncing around the classrooms at school being really naughty. There's an element of that, but that is not generally the female experience. So when we're talking about ADHD, actually, it stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder, which is a really shitty title and doesn't really give any indication to what that means. And there's a big movement at the moment to try and change the name. But ADHD is a category for 3 sub diagnoses. So at one end, we have the hyperactive. We have just all the time. Okay, this is less. It's more unusual in girls to just have that. At the other end of the spectrum, we have inattentive, which is where most girls tend to sit and is one of the reasons why diagnosis gets missed at an earlier age. And then in the center, the third type is combined. So it's a mixture of both of them. And I'm combined type. So in terms of hyperactivity in girls, and this doesn't mean it can't show up in boys, but this is what we tend to see, is it's hyperactive thought, hyper speech. So you'll notice I speak very quickly, you know, and I've been told all my life, slow down, stop speaking. And it's like so jarring. You know, this is just the pace at which everything moves through me. So we can see this sort of like, you know, tapping, kind of really struggling to sit still. For me, if someone speaks like this to me inside, I'm like, run, you know, it's like very, very fast paced it can be. And this can manifest as things like anxiety, overwhelm, burnout. So we can see misdiagnoses happening throughout women's lives actually, and therefore they don't get the right support or treatment. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. But the issue that comes up when we're looking at it from the work that I do is this complete void of the female experience of ADHD. And this is because we have this huge gender bias across medicine. I mean, let's be honest, medicine came from men researching men. You know, even lab rats tend to be male, which is why women have such a shocking experience in so many ways, not because we have horrible doctors, but because the training is so entrenched in misogyny. But that's a whole other podcast. But when we're looking at the ADHD experience, the gender bias really shows up here. So what we know to be true about ADHD and even how to treat it and support it has been based on what the evidence around, like I said, normally little boys or men. It wasn't even recognised to exist in women until a few years ago. So we're really early on in our understanding of it. So when I was diagnosed, it was the most validating experience of my life. And I had spent years going, I don't need a diagnosis. I don't need that. I've been successful in inverted commas, you know. But actually, it was a very positive experience for me. And so my first place to go to was, well, what's the research? What are my hormones doing to my traits? Our hormones affect everything, right? Our brain's covered in these hormone receptors. So I'm going to deep dive into this pool of research that tells me how they're affecting my ADHD. I was like, excuse me, where's this research? Where's the information? Doesn't exist. So that infuriated me. I did undertake a literature review into what there was. I mean, it took about a day, to be honest, because we've got like 4 pieces of research out there. There is an incredible doctor called Dr. Patricia Quinn in the States who's raised the profile around this. But what my observations are that people that are talking about, the pinprick of people talking about ADHD and hormones, were coming from a psychiatric perspective and not necessarily having the privilege that I had of understanding hormones in relation to cognitive function and mental health and emotional well-being, all the things that we see in clinic all the time, right? So I was able to marry, my background had been in safeguarding. I had a lead in special educational needs and working with young women. So I had a really good knowledge of ADHD and could marry that with my knowledge and experience of hormones to bring it together to try to provide a space for ADHD women to understand the role their hormones play. And it's huge. It's huge. And it blows my mind still that it doesn't form a fundamental part of every woman's treatment plan.
Right.
Does that all make sense?
Yeah, totally. I'm just sort of sat here going, just keep speaking.
Okay, well, I'm just going to keep talking there because I will talk.
Yeah, I mean, because I feel at the moment my questions are just going to be unworthy of just allowing you to unfold.
Okay, I'll just keep going.
Yeah,
just tell me what.
Yeah, I'll just jump in.
Interject when you want to. So, what I have done is to really, I feel that women are very disempowered around their health generally. I feel like we either live the way that we think is right, and if it all goes wrong, have this unconscious expectation for a doctor to fix us. And they simply don't have the tools for a lot of things that are
Well, that
there.
we've done something wrong because we
Yeah,
followed what somebody told us was the
yeah.
way. I saw your
We,
post today about that. Yeah.
yeah, it's this masculine concept of like, well, this is the rule to
Yeah.
follow. And actually, I want women to come back to their bodies and their needs and follow their feminine intelligence and say, what is right for me? You know, and particularly, this is one of the things that I see with ADHD women is that we would never give up on finding the why. We want to understand the why. And this really helps us with being able to instigate change, because consistency, you know, it's not a strong point for us. We're very excited at the beginning. We get really motivated. We're like clearing the cupboards. We do it all. And then we go, I'm bored of that now. You know, we're not getting that dopamine hit from it. So that consistency isn't there. But once we understand the why, you know, we are known for going down the rabbit holes for everything. Then it's like, right, that makes sense. You know, and quite often someone can give me a consultation. I could write them a plan and say, like, off you go. She's missing from that involvement in that.
Yes.
So once I include that education and the why, then it's like, right, you know this stuff now. And I, like we were saying earlier, I think there's this thing that women turn up and go, I'm going fucking crazy. I don't recognize myself anymore. My husband hates me. I'm the worst mother in the world. My colleagues, I can't stand them. Like, who am I? What's happened to me?
Yeah.
And quite often I'll show them a picture, an image of a woman's brain covered in hormone and progesterone receptors. Men aren't dealing with this.
Yeah.
Like, we are. And we're trying to show up in our lives in a way that if we went back to evolutionary theory of how our role would have been in tribes at that time, it would have changed. We wouldn't have been external action giving if we had lived that long to see our perimenopausal and menopausal years. We would have been revered for our wisdom, our psychic insight, our intuition, our capacity to hold space and empathize. We would have taken a very different role and energy. And yet we're being expected in our culture to show up like we did in our 20s and 30s when our physiology is going, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is not where we're meant to be.
Yeah.
And so therefore we've got this evolutionary mismatch, whether you're neurodivergent or not,
yes,
of having these mental health problems. You know, it's basically asylum in an SSRI. You know, have some anti-anxiety medication because there's clearly something mentally wrong with you, rather than going, actually, is it the world that's a bit wrong? And this is what I see for ADHDers. I don't think there's anything wrong with us. I think we've always existed, but the world is very different now. And actually, again, I love evolutionary theory. If we look back, humanity needed people like us and our brains to evolve. We're the quick thinkers. You know, you want an ADHD or in a crisis, we manage it very calmly and we can, you know, we have very heightened senses. We'd have been the ones in the tribe that had someone walking towards us 2 miles away and we're up. You know, we smell things, we sense things. Would have been the hunters because you had to make a quick instant decision about what to kill. We had these brains that were fine-tuned to sense and feel everything. And yet we now live in a world, I look at my granny's world 150 years ago, what she grew up in, she wasn't bombarded with what we're bombarded now. Our nervous systems were constantly. She took the kids to school, she came home, she made some dinner, she sewed, she wrote a letter to someone, she maybe had a cup of tea with her neighbour. It was much simpler. I'm not saying there wasn't stress, but there wasn't this constant bombardment on our nervous system that we all have. So you put neurodiversity into that with this constant hyper stimulation of just everything coming at us all the time that our brain's trying to work out. And then we put in the fact that hormonally our needs generally aren't being met. Is it any wonder women step into perimenopause and the lid comes off?
Yeah.
So what we see much more in girls and women is this concept of masking. And this suggests that we're in some way consciously manipulating everybody by choosing to put this mask on and be fake, right? And it's anything but that. Masking is something that from the day you're born, I think, you start to sense that you're different. You're not like seeing the world in the same way. You're not having the same responses. You might in a group of girls when you're a little girl, jump in and finish people's sentences or get really excited, and you realize that that makes them go or think you're rude, or you're told to not show off, or you're told all of these things. So masking is an instinctive survival network that you subconsciously learn. Don't do that. Don't do that, because you'll be pushed out the tribe. No one will play with you. No one will want to be your friend, which is like death for a child, a little girl, even for a woman.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to be pushed out the tribe, so we all conform. And this is what masking is. So we sit in the classroom and smile, because little girls don't have this, oh, boys are being boys. Boys get to run around and be crazy and do those things without anyone taking too much notice of it. If a little girl does that, you're not conforming to gender norms, and you know that, whether that's it's not consciously said to you, but we know that, right? So we begin to build this persona where our external smiley kind of self is not a reflection of what's happened inwardly. So when we're looking at males with ADHD, you're looking at supporting the outward behavior, whereas with girls, it's how does she feel about herself? What's her narrative? What things has she learned about herself? And they're usually, lots of ADHD women are highly critical of themselves. We tend to have something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD, alongside that, which is this intense fear of criticism, of getting it wrong. It leads to perfectionism tendencies, this burnout boom cycle. And RSD, you know, I explain that as, you know, no one likes being told off, right? No one enjoys that. But I would liken it to the thought that you've done something wrong is like a bomb of a million pins going off inside your body. It's literally like a, it's a bit, but you sit like that, and you're holding that. Like as a little girl, I remember so much just wanting to cry at school or something, you know, if someone didn't want to play with me. Or as an adult woman, we can see it as, someone's not replied to our text. What was the last thing that I said to her? Have I done something to upset her? And like, we can go on that thought train. We think it's and it's nothing to do with us. But people would look at that and go, God, that's a bit of ego. Why do you think everything's about yourself? So we don't say to somebody, God, have I done something to upset you? Because you feel like you look mental. So you internalize all of this stuff, and it hooks in, and you become sort of frantic while you're carrying on with your life. And then they just go, oh, so I've not got back to you. I've been, and it's like, oh my God, you know, it's awful. So
I'm just going to say, I know you're in flow.
No, please carry on.
No, I think that, I mean, my God, I'm just like, rejection, and I'm not on this call to sort of diagnose myself or anything, but I really resonate with that whole fear of rejection. I think that's been my biggest thing, to the extent actually that then manifests itself in not showing up in your business.
Yes. Oh, completely.
Not sharing and shining your light. One person rejects you, everyone's rejecting you, and so you just close down. So from that perspective as well, it's if that's a trait, I can see how, you know, that is holding so many women back from living the life they want to live, from running the business in the way that they want to run it, from just showing up in the way that they want to show up, because of that fear of rejection. And that, you know, that I'm like, whoo, okay, this is really interesting for me. So sorry, you were in flow.
No, and I think that's a really important point, because it takes so much. We are often really creative. We're out of the box thinkers. We see solutions to things. Like, no is not an option for us. It's like if someone says, well, no, you can't do that, I'm like, fuck yeah, I can, and I'll find another way to do it. There's always a way, which is why we helped humans evolve, right? Because we'd find a solution. But when we show up in our businesses, social media is a really scary place for ADHD women to be. And that's why lots of women don't take that step with these incredible ideas that they've got, for that fear that someone won't like it. Because every woman who owns her own business does it from a passion, heart-led. It's part of our identity. It's part of who we are. Generally, we care. So the thought of that being exposed out there and someone going, that's a bit rubbish, that's like, I just can't. It's painful. It's a visceral, painful reaction. And then you add your hormones into that. You add in a progesterone deficiency that we particularly start to see in phase 1 of perimenopause. And I call her the Zen yoga chick of the hormone world, that she's coming in to just calm it all down, you know. But for neurodivergent women, a percentage, it's not everybody, has a really difficult time with progesterone, because estrogen, she's the sexy party girl, right? She's coming in, she's making you feel good when she's in balance. She comes in, she sensitizes dopamine. So one of the things, no one knows what causes ADHD, but there's an issue with dopamine, okay? And there's so many different theories on it. I'm not going to go through them, but basically something's not working properly with dopamine. Yeah. Dopamine is our motivator. So for example, I'll come back to the role with the hormones on them.
Yeah.
An ADHDer can sit and look at a pile of ironing and go, I cannot do that. You know, no one gets excited about a pile of ironing. No one's going, woo, can't wait to do it. Right?
I met my partner.
Yeah. But the difference is we will look at it for days, maybe weeks, racked with guilt, trying to get the motivation to, and look at it and go, I physically can't do it. I cannot get that dopamine hit because it's really boring. And we're not going, it's boring, I don't want to do it. It's like a physical inability to hook in and do something that is of no interest. Now, I can focus and give attention for back-to-back 12 hours with hyper focus if I'm interested in it. You're not going to lose my attention. I'm in, I'm absorbing, I'm retaining, I'm taking it. You start talking to me about astrophysicists, you've got me for about 30 seconds before my brain's checked out. My face is smiling and nodding, and I'm gone. That's not there because I'm not interested. So this is where that language around the title of it is misleading, because we can have excellent attention when we're interested.
Yeah.
So to come back to the hormones, with the estrogen sensitizing that dopamine, we're like, okay, this is good. All our strategies, whether we realize they're strategies or not, are working really effectively. You know, I love post-it notes, lists. You know, all these things that I need around me that I didn't realize everybody didn't do until I was diagnosed. They work really well. But then progesterone kicks in the second half of the cycle if we've ovulated. And for some ADHD women, this rains on our parade. It's suddenly like, ugh, it's this flat kind of feeling. We can really struggle. So we know from the science that ADHD women are much more likely to experience PMT, PMDD, postnatal depression, and a more challenging perimenopause. And this is one of the theories as to why we think that is. So when women start progesterone HRT, we need providers to understand how differently some ADHD women can react to that, because actually it could be more challenging for their mental health.
So could it bring them down?
Yeah, because of that effect on the dopamine. It won't for everyone. Progesterone always, also for women who choose to be medicated, progesterone dampens the effects. So estrogen heightens medication and progesterone dampens it. So women are going, oh my God, this medication is amazing, it's working really well for me, and then crash. It's like, oh, it doesn't work anymore. And we just why are we just starting to know this? Like, we're starting to know this. There's no solution.
Yeah.
What the solution currently is, up your medication or try a different medication during this time. My response to that is, maybe that week needs to look different in your diary. Yes. Maybe that week needs to look differently with how you're trying to show up in that week.
Yes.
You know, but we're not having those conversations. So one of the things I do with women in my clinic is teach them how to track their cycle against their traits. So they have this really powerful data-led picture, firstly for themselves, so they can create an ADHD-friendly life around their cycle. But then they can take it to their providers, their care providers, and go, look, this is what's happening to me. They can take it to their partners and go, look at this week, right? My life has to look different. They could take it to their boss if they're able to have that conversation. I know that's quite a privilege. You know,
and I just jump in here as well.
And
just make a point that this is relevant for everyone.
Absolutely.
And I absolutely understand. But as you're talking, I'm like, this is we want every person, woman, going through a menstrual cycle, a moon cycle, to be tracking their energies, because that is so empowering then to be able to go, oh, look, like I said, right at the start, the top of this, I'm noticing that my energy is very different in the final quarter phase of the moon cycle. Okay, I need to be aware of that. And I am constantly at the moment tweaking my diary as I'm deepening and connecting and feeling and seeing. I'm like, okay, right, that needs to shift. So absolutely, to be able to go and say, particularly to a care provider and partner, or whoever you're living with, and go. And also, I think if you are the mother of a girl, there's so much knowledge and wisdom being shared, isn't there, and empowerment.
Oh my gosh, it's, what, if a woman is going to do one thing to change the way she lives, track your cycle, and then through menstrual cycle awareness, apply that to your life.
Yeah.
Everything changes. We stop powering through. We stop pushing through. We are rocket fueled in other phases. We give ourselves this capitalist indoctrination that we have to be 9 to 5 all the time. Busy, 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 busy. Go, 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 go. It's crazy. That's not what we're meant to do as women. We ebb and we flow. And when we have ignored that cycle for so long, no wonder we crash land into perimenopause. Our adrenals are knackered. Our blood sugar is completely dysregulated. Our thyroid is out of whack. Our gut is fucked and inflamed and not doing what it should. Our liver's struggling to detoxify all this stuff. And then we go, God, why have I got so many symptoms? If we teach our daughters and our daughters' daughters to acknowledge they have a cycle. I never knew that. I never knew I had this ebb and flow. How different could it be? Yes, we live in a masculine world where we have to show up. We have to show up, but we can learn to buffer it.
Absolutely.
We can learn to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And clear that time and give ourselves guilt-free permission to rest, to slow down, to restore. And I honestly believe it would have a massive impact on perimenopause.
Huge.
If we were teaching women to work with their cycle all through their 20s and 30s, our 40s would be so much simpler. But
absolutely. So back to tracking, showing your healthcare provider, your partner, if you've got a boss. So
I'm just saying, this is the evidence of how I work. Look, I am on fire here. So I'm thinking, for women who don't have the privilege of being able to manage all of their time in that way, being able to go into work and go, right. I mean, I'm sure that there's lots of people going, I can't go to my boss and go, can I talk to you about my period? We're just not there yet. But you analysing that yourself, and where you do have control, everyone has some element of control over how they spend their day and how they manage their workload and what they're doing. And being able to think, right, okay, this is where I know I work really well. This is where I know I need to do more administrative tasks. This is where I need to do critical reflection. This is where I would thrive in a networky, outward kind of meeting and space. That's the place for me. That's the place for me to socialize. That's the place for me to hit the gym if I want to. I mean, I'm not advocating that because it's definitely not what I do. But this is where actually naps count as exercise. This is, where to do. And everything starts kind of putting these things in place. We feel better. And you know what? Your libido starts to come back. You don't feel resentful of everybody around you because you're in this constant give mode. You're coming back. And from an ADHD perspective, you stop beating yourself up because we tend to operate quite well in our follicular and ovulation phases where that estrogen is high, and then it's more challenging.
The
first half from bleed right up until just past ovulation, we tend to be like, right, I'm on this. And then things, depending on how you react to progesterone, things then can shift up. And that luteal phase is usually where most ADHD women feel their traits. We're going to overwhelm. I can't do this. Catastrophize. We forget everything. We're much more emotionally dysregulated. We get more of the fatigue, blah, blah, blah. That's the worst phase. But then, of course, because we're cyclical, when we go back into the estrogen, we go, I was just having a bad week. And this is one of the things for delay, right? This is what delays some of the diagnosis, and we get stuck in that for years. So it delays this. So once you have that data, so I had a client yesterday, for example, sat down. She suddenly, by tracking her data for 3 months, she went, oh my God, day 23 is the day. That's the day everything changes. She said, and I said, right now, how are you going to apply that to life? So you look forward to the month and go, no
Yes.
socializing. No,
Yes.
I'm going to cook a great big dinner and I'm going to host.
I'm going to make really important decisions.
No, don't make decisions. We're very reactive people, right? We're very impulsive. We're very reactive. I can't stress enough to my ADHD divas, don't make life-changing decisions in that phase. Like, hold on to it. We're usually massive verbal processors, as you can tell. It's like, go and talk to somebody about it that is safe. Safe people to us are really important, because so often we've had so many experiences where our ADHD traits have been misconstrued as character flaws as women. So we don't feel good enough. We don't feel safe in relationships. Quite often, obviously I can talk for England about things that I'm able to hook into, but you put me in a social situation and I get Homer Simpson brain. I just go completely mute and I think I don't know what to say. And I've always admired people who can chit chat, who can chit chat and make small talk. I literally have nothing to say. My brain just goes, doo. Whereas come and talk to me about your vagina or your childhood trauma and I'm in. I'm like, yeah, this is meaningful. We can do this. So it's starting to understand that about yourself. So finding that safe person in that phase and finding who's going to be your perimenopause support buddy. Who's going to be that person that's your safe person to process these things as they come up. So I hope, does that help to explain why perimenopause tends to be this phase where ADHD shows up for a lot of women? Because the lids come off masking.
And I find it so interesting, and I'm really conscious that I might be saying something that's going to have people really disliking me. But what I hear you describing is what I hear for so many, with or without an ADHD diagnosis or not. And I'm just assuming that the ADHD, with being neurodivergent, just adds an extra dimension.
Absolutely.
To that.
So quite often there's a lot that I've said that every woman will go, well, I identify with that. And absolutely, that is like the scale. The where it becomes different with diagnosis is, I explain it like this. Everyone needs to go for a wee every single day, right? You need to wee. But if you're going 20 times an hour, it's a problem.
Yes.
So it's when the amount of it starts to affect your quality of life, when it's affecting the quality of your relationships, when it's affecting you being able to show up in your business. It's these kind of things where the traits and experience of it are so debilitating, you may not even be able to function and show up. You don't want to socialize, you don't want to do those things. It becomes huge. You can't remember anything, so we can forget things quite a lot. So both my children, well, all of us are neurodivergent in my house, and there's in the morning trying to remember everything to get out of the door, and it's like we've done this for years, the same thing every day. Someone always forgets a bottle or a lunchbox, or we look chaotic, and we're not. I'm actually a very organized person, but things just drop out. So what I would say is, it's about looking at the quality of your life, and this is where it becomes more the impact on the quality of your life. And it's more challenging in perimenopause because there are a lot of ADHD traits that show up as hormone imbalances. So one of the things that I do with my clients is say, we're going to deal with the hormones and then you're going to know what you're left with. So once the hormones are worked out, you know what's a trait. You know what else you need support with.
That makes that makes a lot.
Does that answer that?
That really does. That really makes a big difference there. And then something had popped into my head and I was like, oh, hang on to that thought. But then God, I could listen to you for hours. I find this well, we both know we could riff on this all day, every day, and talk about it from that perspective. So whilst I maybe allow all of this to settle for me, how do people get to work with you? How if someone's listening and they're thinking, oh my goodness, I really need to be in and around Adele's energy, aura, she's speaking my language, I've been feeling like this, and the safe person is normally the person that we we start to feel that magnetic draw to. Tell us a little bit about how we can work with you, how people can work with you.
So first of all, I want to acknowledge what you said there about people feeling that draw, because I'm not for everybody, and I'm very comfortable with that. You know, I'm very me with how I work. I develop really like natural relationships with my clients. I'm not sterile and I'm not clinical.
Yeah.
So I, you know,
You better like some F-bombs.
Yeah, I love an F-bomb. I'm sorry. And that is it. You find ADHDers are quite sweary sometimes as well. So sorry about that.
Not at all.
But I would say, you know, I offer free discovery calls to women so that we can feel into if we're right for each other.
Yeah.
And if not, I have such an amazing network of practitioners. There will be somebody that I will know. So it won't be a waste of your time. You can come and hang out with me on Instagram. I love a good rant on there about hormones and ADHD. I'm like, come on, let's have the conversation. Or just check out my website, harmoniseyu.co.uk.
Yeah. I was really, I don't know why I didn't know this about you. I was really interested to discover that you do the Dutch test, because again, you know, when I'm looking at my clients, I have somebody I hold in really, really high regard that I send people to for their Dutch test. But now I'm thinking, but now I've got the extra benefit of the Dutch test with the ADHD understanding. And again, it's about being able to signpost, you know, people to the right people who've got that really, really, really deep understanding. Because as you said, it adds an extra dimension and an extra level of understanding. So I'm very, very mindful and respectful of our time, because we have gone into flow. It has been super, super interesting for me. And I think, you know, I really love the point about when we settle the hormones and we see what we're left with, then that's where we, you know, we do extra work and extra magic that's unique and bio individual to you as a human. I hope for many the takeaway is, if you aren't already, is start tracking your cycle. And you know, for me as a postmenopausal woman, I track with the moon. I am more connected through menstrual cycle awareness. I call it menstrual cycle awareness, even though I'm not menstruating, but you know, I am more connected to my cycle than I ever was as a menstruating being. And as you said, it's given me such a sense of empowerment, such a sense of calm. It's really helping me sort of get into my groove and allowing me to show up when is the best time for me to show up, and you know, when to pull back. And even like today, you know, day 31 wouldn't normally be a day that we would write in, let's do a podcast or, you know, come on live, but we snuggle, we cacao, we candle, and we can find the opportunity to come in and do. So any last thoughts, words of wisdom for anybody that is listening who sat here thinking, is this me?
Please reach out. I run a WhatsApp group called ADHD Divas. It's got nearly 200 women on there, where it's incredibly supportive. Whether you have an inkling, I would say by the time a woman has gone, I think this is me, that's enough. Usually, you know, I don't care whether someone's been diagnosed or not. You know, that to me is enough. So just don't be alone. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't feel alone with it. Just reach out.
Yeah. And again, you know, such a key point to finish on. Don't be alone. Women, we always need community, but even more so at these, you know, these key phases in life where we are simply able to be seen and be heard and be held without judgment, and sometimes hear those words, me too, or no, you're not going crazy.
Yes.
And you know, for me, it's actually, whenever I listen to you talking, I just hear talk about ADHD, I just hear this really powerful feminine energy. I think for me, it's like, for me, I almost describe it like feminine energy on steroids.
Yeah.
Because it's all of it.
Yeah.
It's all of it. And then when you can learn to embrace it and flow with it and harness it and make it work for you, then wow. then
Yeah,
you're really coming back into yourself and allowing you to
absolutely.
be the unique being, woman, person that you are in this world. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Oh,
I'm sure I want to invite you back at another time to talk about it at the earlier phase
yeah,
of the spectrum, because I'm sure there'll be quite maybe some people listening going, I need to talk to you about my daughter.
that's fine.
And that
Yeah,
absolutely. So,
yeah.
it's that. And again, I'm just going to leave. God, now I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Start tracking, start teaching your daughter how to track her cycle and see how her energy shifts. And a little bit like you said, maybe you'll find with her on day 23, the mask comes off and, something happens and you're like there. And that was the point I wanted to make. Like anything, if you're in that second phase and that's when everything's been dampened, but you go and see the doctor on day 7 or day 10, it's a very different person going to be
Mm,
showing up and answering the questions. And also, we're all, as you've said, we're all taught to belittle our emotions and our feelings. So exactly as you said, well, I was just having a bad week. Oh, until next month.
mm,
I'm having a bad, and we forget, don't we? I have a bad week every month, but we've been taught that that's normal.
mm.
So that was that. So anyway, I'm throwing things in at the end. Go find
Yeah.
Adele on Instagram, Harmonise You. I'll put all of her links below. This has been such a nourishing conversation.
I love speaking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll be back in contact and dancing together, I'm sure, somewhere very, very soon. Thank
Bye,
you.
darling.
Take care. Bye bye.